Today's daf we're going to be learning is Bava Metzia daf Nun Gimel. This week's learning is sponsored by Lynn Kasuto in loving memory of her mother, Anne Kasuto. Chana Bat Moshe Vehena is her 11 months of Kaddish ends on Pesach. She was deeply devoted to Jewish tradition, prayer, and text, and made sure her children received a strong Jewish education. She is forever missed. May her memory be a blessing for Klal Yisrael. Today's daf is sponsored in loving memory of Anita Dinerstein from her children and grandchildren on her first year at site. Her commitment to learning and the Jewish people continue to inspire us. Today's daf is sponsored by Mona and David Schwartz and family in loving memory of their mother and grandmother Mary Horowitz, Miriam Etzel Bat Aaron Alevi and Muriel on her 30th year. A woman whose home personified Achnasat Orchim, may her neshama have an aliyah. Okay, we're going to get started with a few quick announcements. Tomorrow will be our last day on Zoom for the next week. All the days of Pesach, we will not be learning together on Zoom, but all the shiurim will be uploaded. In fact, they should be up this morning after class. I'll make sure they're all posted. You'll find them. There'll be a one page on the Beyond the Daf section on the homepage, which has links to all the dafim. Today they won't appear in order at the website, but tomorrow after class, once I upload Bava Metzia 54 Nun Daled, I'm then going to upload one after the other. So if you go to the site, usually the first page you're going to see is not going to be today's daf, but it will end up being the last daf of Pesach. And on every daf post, you'll just find a link to there's a link to the page that has all the links, and then you can find it that way. And we will not be sending out WhatsApps daily like we usually do, because we're going to send one WhatsApp with all the links to all the pages. And you can always just go back to that last WhatsApp, the last WhatsApp we sent you, and that will have the links to everything. Hopefully that's clear. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to us by email is usually best, or WhatsApp if you need to. Okay, with that, let's get started with our daf. We're going to be off the topic of ona'ah for today. We're going to deal with really maaser sheni. And the statement that Chizkiya had made that appeared in yesterday's daf, we are going to go into a gufa, which means we're basically going in depth into this one topic. Chizkiya said, okay, we're now toward the bottom of Nun Bet Amud Bet, about 5 lines from the bottom. Amar Chizkiya, maaser sheni she'en bo shaveh pruta. This is just a repeat of something we mentioned before. Omer hu b'chumsho chulal ha'ma'ot harishon. So if you have maaser sheni that doesn't have a value, it's not valued at a pruta. You have some produce, you want to redeem it onto a coin, it doesn't work. Okay, we're going to see at the end of the daf why it doesn't work, or not really why, but from where do we get it? But basically the concept is that it's not enough. There's not enough strength in this amount of fruits, this amount of produce, to put it onto a coin, okay? Because it's not even worth the value of a coin. So you can't do it. So what does Chizkiya say? Instead of saying you can't redeem it at all, we'll give you a possibility. You could do it like this. Listen. Okay, let's read the next few words and then we'll start from there. People are not so exacting in their measurements. And because of that, when you, let's say the day before, took maaser sheni produce, let's just remember what maaser sheni is. Maaser sheni is the second tithe. What happens is here in years 1, 2, 4, and 5, not 3 and 6. 3 and 6, that tithe is called the maaser ani. It goes to 4 people. But in 1, 2, 4, and 5, you have to take an additional tithe in addition to the truma you gave to the coin, the maaser that you gave to the Levi, the 10th that went to the Levi. You also have to take another 10th of your produce and bring it and eat it in Jerusalem. But we give you a solution that makes it a little easier than carrying all your stuff to Jerusalem. It's pretty schleppy. We let you redeem it onto a coin and bring your money to Jerusalem and buy stuff with it there. Now you can buy all sorts of things with it there and then eat that in Jerusalem. And what happens is, and this is important to understand, when you have the produce originally and you move it onto a coin, the produce becomes regular produce. It's not maaser sheni anymore. All the maaser sheni goes on that coin. When you take that coin and you then buy produce in Jerusalem, the produce now has the sanctity of the maaser sheni, the second tithe, and it's removed from the money. Okay, that's important to understand for today's daf. So now he says, what do you do? When you originally, let's say you had some other produce that was worth a pruta and you redeemed it onto a coin, presumably you took a bigger coin than you needed, because people aren't exacting in their measurements. So you said, let's just take a bigger coin, and then you have some left over that actually wasn't redeemed with maaser sheni produce. So on that little bit that's left over, right? Let's say you had a $10 worth of coin, you put $9.50 worth, so you have an empty half of $1 that's left on that coin. So obviously we don't have $10 coins. I'm just kind of using it as an example. And then what do? You have this stuff that's worth half $1. So you say that's just going to go on. So it's not strong enough to go on its own coin, but it can go into that space that was left on that other coin. So that could work. Made today. Now we have a problem. That can't work. because look at this Mishnah and something that seems to be implied from the Mishnah. And if you think maybe we don't imply that from the Mishnah, what the Gemara is going to question, we're then going to prove that you do. Okay, so then we're going to have a big problem. The background to this is what we call dinei ta'arovit. We're going to learn a lot about these, certainly when we get to Hulin and stuff and laws of kashrus. But there's a Torah law basically that means that if I have something that's sanctified, let's say, that gets mixed up in a pile of non-sanctified items, and now I don't know, it's all mixed up. I have no idea. I had, let's say, kernels of wheat that are now mixed up in all sorts of other kernels of wheat. They all look the same, but some were maaser sheni, or some were truma, or some were whatever they are. What happens? So by Torah law, batel b'rov, okay, majority rules. So if you have majority non-sanctified produce, then the whole thing is fine. But the rabbis instituted, first of all, batel b'shishim, because it's 1 in 60. You can still taste it, right? The classic is, your milk fell into your cholent. As long as there's 60 of the meat against the 1 drop of the milk, it's okay. However, there are certain things that don't get nullified by that amount. So one is going to be truma, which needs 100. Okay, we're stricter with certain rules. The other thing you need to know, which we're going to get to, is something that will ultimately be permitted, right? Like, for example, maaser sheni can be redeemed. Once it's redeemed, what did I tell you? Once it's redeemed, the produce is totally fine. It's not sanctified anymore. So if I have some maaser sheni that fell into a pile of non-maaser sheni, then we would call that a davar sheyesh matirin. And davar sheyesh matirin, afilu be'elef lo batil. If you have something that will ultimately be permitted, even in 1,000 against it, it will never be nullified. Because why? Laws of nullification work because we don't want you to have to throw out the whole thing and waste it. But if there's a way to redeem it, fix it, if it can be fixed, like maaser, where basically you just say, oh, well, I know that X amount fell into here, so let's just redeem that onto a coin that will take the sanctity off the maaser sheni, and I'll be good, right? Then I'm going to end up with a whole pile where it's 100% chulin, and I won't have a problem at all. So that kind of thing shouldn't be able to be nullified, and that's where we're going to get into a problem. So let's read it inside. The Mishnah here is a Mishnah that appears in Chala and in Bikurim, and it says here, "Truma v'habikurim chayavim alehem mita." Truma and bikurim. These are not what we're talking about. This is truma that goes to the kohen. Bikurim, your first fruits that go to the kohen on Shavuot. Chayavim aleh, or around Shavuot, they would bring them to the temple. Chayavim alehem mita b'chomesh v'asurim l'zachim. Let's start with the third one. They're forbidden to a non-kohen to eat. And if a non-kohen eats them, then mita, they get death by the hands of God, not court imposed, but they will get killed according to the Torah. Chomesh, you have to not only return the value of what you took and ate, but you also have to add an additional fifth. Ve'hein nichsei kohen, they also become the property of the kohen. So if the kohen, we've seen this before, wants to betroth a woman with that, he can. Ve'olim be'echad u'mea, this is important, this is the one line that's relevant to us. They're nullified in a mixture 1 in 100, not in majority, not in 1 in 60, not in, right, but in 1 in 100. Utunim mechitzat yadayim. This is, by the way, why we washed netilat yadayim, because in those days, when they would touch, the rabbi said, we think people's hands touch everything. So hands are considered a sheni l'tuma. Sheni can pass on impurity only to a shlishi. Now, what counts as a shlishi? Well, normal things don't become a shlishi. There is no shlishi for regular things, but there is for truma and for hodshim, sanctified, like sacrifices. So that's not what we're talking about here, but we're talking about the truma and bikurim, which can become a shlishi because they have sanctity to them that makes the sheni, right? So if your hands are tame and they touch it, they can pass on impurity to the truma. And that's why before you touch them, you have to wash your hands so that you don't pass on impurity. Ve'harev shemesh, and this is from the first Mishnah in Shas, right, when the kohanim go in to eat their truma, means you go to the mikveh in the morning if you're impure, but if you want to eat the truma, you have to wait till the sun sets in order to eat until the end of sunset when the stars come out. And that's the same time you could start saying arvit. That's not relevant to our purposes. It's just reminding you of the first Mishnah of Shas. Hare elu b'truma u'bikurim. Now the Mishnah finishes. These are true for truma bikurim. Masha ein came b'maaser, but it's not true for maaser. So if it's not true for maaser, okay, Actually, I didn't check if these are actually in the words of the Mishna or not, but I think even if they're not, right, the point is these are unique to Truma and Bikurim, and they're not true for Maaser Sheni. Now, my Masha'en came to Maaser, so let's take this. Okay, so this isn't true for Maaser. Lav Michlal de Maaser Batel Beruba. Now, according to this, what would you say? Maaser Sheni is Batel Berov. It's not 1 in 100 with this special Chumrah that you have, a special stringency by Truma and Bikurim. No, Maaser is the basic law. It's Batel by majority. Vim Ita, the Chizkiya. Now, it can't possibly be true that Maaser Sheni is Batel Berov in a regular Maaser Sheni case. Why is that? Because a regular Maaser Sheni case can always be redeemed, as I said. And if it can be redeemed, it's a davar sheyesh matirin. So what case must it be? A case where it can't be redeemed. What case do we know can't be redeemed? Maaser Sheni she'ein bo shavek pruta. Now, if you say it's a Maaser Sheni she'ein bo shavek pruta, then im ita le Chizkiya, if Chizkiya was right, it's also havale davar sheyesh matirin. The chol davar sheyesh matirin afilu be'elef lo batil. If Chizkiya has a solution to how you can redeem Maaser Sheni that's less than a pruta, then what the Mishna is saying, this Truma can be canceled, nullified in a mixture of 1 in 100, which is not true for, right, which is more strict than Maaser, which can be nullified in a majority, meaning if you have 2 parts chulin, regular stuff, 1 part Maaser Sheni, it's fine. The whole thing is batel. Why would it be batel? Why would it be nullified, the Maaser Sheni nullified in that mixture, if the Maaser Sheni could be fixed? So again, they're going to assume we must be talking about Maaser Sheni that's less than a pruta, which can't be fixed. And Chizkiya says there's still a way to fix it, though. So according to Chizkiya, there's no way to explain this Mishnah because there's no case of Maaser Sheni that can't be fixed. And if you want to say, maybe there's really no question here because maybe you misunderstood the inference from the Mishnah. Maybe it's saying the Maaser is more strict, that it's never nullified, and that would fit perfectly because it would mean, right, any Maaser can be redeemed, including this Maaser that has less than a shavek pruta, like Chizkiya said, because there's a way to redeem it, in which case it's davar sheyesh matirin, in which case it's no question, because it obviously can't ever be redeemed. And then we're just saying that Maaser Sheni, Masha'en came to Maaser means it's not true for Maaser because Maaser has a stricter law. What's the problem with saying that? You can't say that Maaser Sheni is stricter and that it's never nullified because Dilagabe Truma, this whole list here in this Mishnah, are listing Chomer de Truma Katani. They're trying to say all the way that Truma is more stringent than other things. So it would have to be the Maaser is lenient, and lenient would mean Batel Barov. And Kule de Truma Lo Katani. They're not listing here all the leniencies of Truma law. To which they say, Hakatani Kohen, Hakatani Behen Nechse Kohen. But wait, there is a kula here. What's the kula? The kula is this can be used for the Kohen, right? It belongs to the Kohen. It's not sanctified in the sense that it's holy, and you can't use it to sanctify a woman. But once the Kohen gets this as a gift, the Kohen can use it. That's a leniency. They say you still can't say with the Maaser knows, and then we could say maybe Maaser is more strict in terms of, right, the also the law of Batel. And then we'd say, okay, well, that works perfectly with Chizkiya. You can't say that because of this braita. And this braita is really going to take us for the rest of most of the class today. Titanya Behadya, because it says explicitly what we thought originally we were going to infer, which was the question on Chizkiya, which is Maaser Sheni Batel Beruba. Okay, it says explicitly that Maaser Sheni is nullified in a majority. How do we know this? Because it says, the braita says exactly this. Maaser Sheni Batel Beruba, right? It's Batel Berov. Ube Eze Maaser Sheni Amru. What Maaser Sheni were they referring to when they said this? Batel Berov, because again, regular Maaser Sheni can be redeemed. If it can be redeemed, it's a davar sheyesh matirin. It's something that's going to ultimately be permitted. And therefore, we're not going to say it's nullified because, again, let's just remember this. I want to make sure this is fully clear to everybody. Why do we say batel? Why do we say davar sheyesh matirin is never batel? Because dinei bitul is to save us from having to throw something out and waste. But in this case, you won't need to waste it. You'll just fix it. If it can be fixed, okay, then basically we're not going to allow you to ever say it's nullified in a mixture. So since it can be fixed, right, Maaser Sheni should be not Batel Berov. So which Maaser Sheni did they say? Here it says it explicitly, maaser she'ein bo shaveh pruta. Okay, and if you brought it into Jerusalem and then left Jerusalem, it would also be canceled, and it was in this mixture, it would also be canceled. We don't know yet why that is. We're going to get to that soon. But sticking with our topic, before we get off topic on the Jerusalem case, im ita Chizkiya were right. Well, then then maaser sheni that doesn't have a pruta, that gets mixed up in a combination of regular stuff, and we say it's canceled by majority, it's nullified in a majority. You shouldn't say that. According to Chizkiya, this has a resolution. You can fix it. Since you can fix it, it shouldn't be batel. What will you do? You'll say, oh, well, yesterday I redeemed some maaser sheni produce on a coin. I have some left over there. I'll just put it onto there. And with that, I'll fix it. And if it can be fixed, it can't be nullified. So now we're stuck. How do we explain it? And that's what we did so far was first we tried to infer from the Mishna that this were the case, that it's nullified by majority, but it never says it's nullified by majority. It just said it's not the same as Truma, which is nullified 1 in 100. So we assumed it meant nullified by majority. Then we said, maybe it means it can never be nullified, and that would work perfectly. But we can't say that because of this braita, which makes it clear that it wasn't clear enough in the inference from the Mishnah, but it is clear from this braita that maaser she'ein bo shaveh pruta, it's less than a pruta. The maaser sheni cannot be fixed, basically. In other words, saying batel b'rov basically means it can't be fixed. So now we're stuck. Chizkiya, it's really just a big question on Chizkiya. So now it's going to be a bit of a long-winded answer, and also to understand the case of Jerusalem, it's going to be a little long-winded, so be prepared. So the first answer is pretty simple. Delo parik. It's talking about a case where I didn't redeem any maaser sheni yesterday or the day before or the day before or the day before, and I don't have a coin that has a little bit left over. And because of that, I can't fix this pile. But that's not good enough because there's solutions. Like now we're going to suggest 4 possible solutions that you could do and explain what we're going to have to do in each case is. We're going to say why this could have theoretically fixed the situation. And if the situation could be fixed, we're back to square one. But then we're going to say, no, the rabbis basically said we're going to keep the law of batel b'rov here because of some other consideration. Okay, they didn't want to allow this solution to this mixture, right? Because it might cause some other problem. So let's see what the 4 options are. So again, if you had already a coin that you would redeem produce on, for sure you could fix it. That must not be what the braita is referring to. Braita is referring to when you didn't already redeem fruits and have some left on a coin that you could, because then you really could have fixed. But then they say, even if you didn't have, so the obvious, so we have this pile of maaser sheni that's less than a pruta that's mixed in, okay? And we want to fix it. So what will we do? Take some other produce that you haven't redeemed yet, that's more than a pruta, put it together. Now you have produce right now. Again, we don't know which exactly the produce is in there, but it doesn't matter. We say, okay, whatever maaser sheni is in this pile that's mixed up with other stuff, and the new maaser sheni I'm bringing, let's put those together and redeem it. Now we have more than a pruta's of value. Redeem it on a coin. That seems pretty simple. But the answer, d'oraita or d'Rabbanan lo mitztarfe. What's the problem? By Torah law, it says, acharei rabim lahatot, we go by majority, which means that by Torah law, this pile no longer has a problem. This pile is not maaser sheni. Only because the rabbis instituted that, you can't, if it's yesh lo matirin, then you can't say it's nullified. Because of that, right now, this pile is only obligated by rabbinic law to redeem it. And now you can't bring maaser sheni, this by Torah law, and put it together with the rabbinic law. You can't do right? Remember, we've learned this before about truma. You can't do min patur la chiyuv, chiyuv la patur. You can't combine d'oraita and d'Rabbanan and do it all in one shot. You can do your d'Rabbanan separately, your d'oraita separately, and obviously your d'Rabbanan, you have a problem because you can't do it because it's less than a pruta. If it was more than a pruta, we wouldn't have a problem. We would just redeem it on its own, but it's less than a pruta, so we have a problem. Okay, option 2, nete demai. So let's bring something that's obligated by rabbinic law. If I bought produce from an amoraic or an amoraic gave me produce, I have to worry that maybe they didn't redeem. They didn't do the maaser. So what do I have to do? I have to take maaser again. Only by rabbinic law, though, because it could be there is no obligation because it could be they did it already, but we don't know. So the rabbi said, out of Suffolk, you need to do it. So perfect. Let's take something that's rabbinic and mix it with something that's rabbinic. And now we have a perfect solution. We have demai produce, like let's find something that we got, have that combine with the amount that I put in there. Together will be more than a pruta. We'll redeem it on a coin. Perfect solution. And then we're back to square one, because if you could redeem it that way, then there's a solution, which means it's a davar matirin, and it shouldn't be batal, shouldn't be nullified by majority. They say, no, we're not going to let you do that, because if we let you bring demai and combine it with this, maybe you'll accidentally bring regular truma, that's regular produce, that's the regular maaser sheni, which is a davar, and then you can't combine davar to Rabbanit. So basically, we tried to suggest, number one, bring maaser sheni, davar produce, and do it. That doesn't work, because you can't mix davar to Rabbanit, because the thing is already nullified by Torah law. So for sure, it's not obligated by Torah. Only rabbinic law said, no, we have to, it's a davar sheyesh matirin. Then bring something that's demai. So again, I had maaser sheni produce that I took from fruits that I bought from an amoraic, and now I want to redeem them together with this combination stuff and say, oh, there's a $50 worth in this of maaser sheni in this big combo. Let's combine that with my demai. Perfect solution. But it's not a perfect solution, because if we let me do that, I might accidentally come to do also the same thing with Torah law maaser sheni. I might not realize the difference. Okay, here's another solution. Okay, what did Chizkiya say? Use money that you had, right, that you already redeemed stuff. And we said, well, this case must be you didn't have stuff. So let's create a situation where you have stuff. Meaning, let's take produce now that's worth a pruta, take two pruta, 2 coins. And let's take fruits that are worth a pruta and a half, and we'll create a situation now where we have a coin with leftover. And then we'll redeem that on the leftover, and basically then we'll turn it back into a davar sheyesh matirin. Then there'll be a way to do it. And then whatever's left, that half a pruta that's left, we'll take our produce that got mixed in with the pile, and we'll say, we're removing the half a pruta of maaser sheni produce onto the coin. This is chulin, this pile is all fine now, and that would turn it back into a davar sheyesh matirin, which would then say, why does it say it's batel b'rov? It doesn't make sense. It's nullified in the majority. So they say, wait, taking a pruta b'chetzi of produce and putting it on 2 pruta won't work either. Why? Because it doesn't work that way. Misavar pruta v'metzia tafshas shei pruta. What you think if you take a pruta metzia of produce, right? A pruta, let's just call it a $1.50 of produce, and put it on $2 bills. That doesn't work. Okay, even though it's obviously not bills, it's coins only, but I'm just giving an example. Or let's say $2 to $1 coins. Okay, I have a $1 coin to $1 coin. Okay, now that won't work. Why? Pruta tafsa pruta. Well, because if I take produce that's worth a pruta and a half, and I try to redeem it onto 2 silver dollar coins, I'm going to have a problem. Because what's going to happen is pruta goes on the pruta. In other words, a pruta's worth of produce will go on to that 1 coin. But then we're left with half a pruta left. And the half a pruta I can't put on the whole pruta coin, because we just said that was where we started. A half a pruta can't be redeemed onto its own coin. It doesn't work that way. So chatzi pruta lo tafsa. It's not going to work. So we can't take 1.5 prutas onto 2 prutas and then say, oh, look, there's half a pruta left. Let's move the other stuff onto there. Hadran, and then we're going to end up with, if you do it that way, you're going to end up with half a pruta that's not redeemed at all onto that $1 coin, plus your half a pruta that's in a mixture. Now, in that case, what do we have? The half a pruta is a maaser sheni d'oraita, because you haven't redeemed it, and it's not in a mixture or anything. The other half a pruta is in a mixture, which by Torah law is nullified. Only the rabbi said it's not nullified because you can fix it. So now you can't fix it because you have 2 things that you want to combine together to go on that pruta. One is Torah law, one is rabbinic law. You can't combine them. So Hadran havila d'oraita d'Rabbanan. You're going to have a Torah and a rabbinic. D'oraita d'Rabbanan lo mitzarfe. You can't put those 2 together. Last and final option, and then we're going to prove that none of these are possibilities, which proves to us, again, as we said before, that's why it's batel b'rov, because it actually can't be fixed. B'nei isa, Well, okay, so obvious. Take your pruta b'chetzi. Let's assume we had, I'm just using the example from before. Let's say we had a $2 coin. Okay, there are now $2 bills. Okay, let's say you had that. So take your pruta b'chetzi, put it on the $2 bill, and then that would be perfect because you only have $1.50 worth of produce. The half is left, and then that would work for, then we could say, now we have that empty space, put the maaser sheni that got into this combo, and we could fix it. So that's our fourth option to say, really, you really could fix this. Well, Dilma atela tuye pruta. The rabbis didn't want to allow that because they thought that maybe you would do it without an isar. An isar is worth like 8 prutot. Maybe you wouldn't use an isar. Maybe you would end up doing it with 2 prutot, and that would be allowed, as saw in the previous option. So in order to prevent people from thinking you could do these things, which might lead to problems, which we said in a bunch of the cases, it would lead to problems, the rabbi said, I'm going to read the words of Rashi, the second to last line in Rashi here on the page. The rabbis preferred to say it's batel b'rov and not it's a davar sheyesh matirin because they didn't want you to try to use some of these solutions that were bad solutions or that might lead you to problematic solutions. So because of that, they just ruled here we're going to keep the Torah law of batel b'rov and not say this falls as a category of davar sheyesh matirin. So theoretically, it could be fixed, but since a lot of the ways to fix it are problematic, the rabbis just said it's batel b'rov. That's finally our solution. Now they want to figure out, though, other case in the braita that I said we get back to. Braita says, shenichnas Yerushalayim v'yatsa. Now, okay, let's just think about this. Again, we have to say this is a davar she'ein lo matirin. It can't be fixed, because if it could be fixed, it wouldn't be nullified in a majority. It would be never nullified. So we have this produce that went into Jerusalem, came out of Jerusalem. Now, you can't eat maaser sheni produce that came, right, that's outside Jerusalem. But what can you do? You can fix it. How do you fix it? Very easily. You bring it back into Jerusalem, okay? And you eat it in Jerusalem. So that seems like a pretty obvious solution, which would then put it in the category of a davar sheyesh lo matirin as a way to fix it. So we're going to have to figure out what's this case. So either it can be fixed by eating, or maybe it can be fixed by redeeming. Now, the rabbi said that once it leaves Jerusalem, if it was in Jerusalem and leaves Jerusalem, you can no longer redeem it. And that's a rabbinic ordinance. So remember that as we go along in our back and forth here. So now the Gemara says, I don't understand. Why is it batel b'rov? Just bring it back into Jerusalem and eat it. So the first attempts are going to be based on the fact that maybe it was nitma, b'shenitma. We're talking about produce that went into Jerusalem, went out of Jerusalem, and again, it got combined in a mixture because otherwise we're not. What's the point of we're talking about laws of nullification? And it was impure. Now, once it's impure, you can't eat it anymore in Jerusalem. So then there's no solution. Okay. Well, they say, what do you mean there's no solution? Even if it's became impure, so you can't eat it in Jerusalem anymore, but you can redeem it. Benifricate. It can be redeemed, in which case, again, it can be fixed. Damar, how do we know this? Because Amar Rabbi Elazar. How do you know that once it was impure, you still can redeem it? Turning now to Amud Bet, afilu b'Yerushalayim, even in Jerusalem. Okay, so you have produce. It was maaser sheni. It was in Jerusalem. It can still be redeemed. Shenemal. Okay, now here we're going to take a pasuk totally out of its simple reading. Ki lo tuchal se'eto. This is a pasuk in Sefer Dvarim, which Dvarim Yudalid, chapter 14, verse 24, which describes why we allow the whole thing about redeeming maaser sheni. Because what's the issue? When it's too far to walk, you live far from Jerusalem, because you can't carry it, it's too heavy. Well, comes Rabbi Elazar and he darshans this word se'eto. He says, "Ein se'et ela achila." Now, this is saying if it's too heavy to carry, then you can redeem it. So now he says, what does it mean, kilo tuchal se'eto? If you can't eat it in Jerusalem, why can't you eat it? Because it became impure. Then also you can redeem it. In other words, laws of redemption, according to Rabbi Elazar, are permitted if it became impure. So if you had this stuff in Jerusalem that fell into a mixture, right? Maaser sheni produce fell into a mixture. Again, I'm reminding you, we're talking about it was a shevet pruta. Okay, there were two cases here. One was it was less than a shevet pruta, and one was it went to Jerusalem and left. So it gets into this combination. It goes out of Jerusalem, and now we say, well, since it was impure, and so you can't eat it, so you can't bring it back into Jerusalem, but you can redeem it. So then it can be fixed. So then it shouldn't be batel b'rov. How do we know ein se'et ela achila? This is with Joseph and the brothers, and it says he divvied out portions for them of food, and it said masot. Masot. So masot could be food, and that's why it means lo tuchal seito. You couldn't eat it. Couldn't eat it because it became impure. So he has this law that you can redeem it. Okay, so let's try a different one. It was impure, but it was, and it can't be redeemed because what? It was lakach bekesef maaser sheni. It was something, it wasn't your produce that you brought to Jerusalem from your house. It was produce that you redeemed, and as you redeemed the produce onto a coin, you brought the coin to Jerusalem, you bought with it maaser, you bought with it produce that now became maaser sheni. And then it got impure and it left, right? It got into a combination of things. It got impure and it left Jerusalem. In other words, all these things have to happen. And then we assume because you bought the produce in Jerusalem, well, then already you can't redeem. To which they say, who says that's true? You can also redeem it. Lakoch b'masir sheni nami lifrake ditnan. Halakoch b'masir sheni shenitma yipadeh. Now, once, let's just be clear about this. If it was pure, it never became impure, you wouldn't, and it left Jerusalem, you would no longer be able to redeem it. If it was bought with maaser sheni money in Jerusalem, and then basically the money, again, the sanctity, this is what I told you in the beginning of class, the sanctity leaves the money, goes on to the produce. And then it left Jerusalem, and this is a rabbinic ordinance. The rabbi said you can no longer redeem it, okay, if it became impure. So now we're going to say, you can no longer redeem it in general. But if it became impure, and in other words, the point is, once you buy it and it leaves Jerusalem, you can't redeem it. You have to bring it back into Jerusalem and eat it. But if you can't eat it because it became impure, then you actually can redeem it. In which case, right, what's the issue? Well, then, if that's what we're saying the case is, it was impure and left Jerusalem, well, you actually can still redeem it. In which case, it shouldn't be batel barov. To which they answer, Rabbi Yehuda da amar yikaver. We could explain it like Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says, there's a machloket here. One opinion says you can redeem it. Rabbi Yehuda says you can bury it. That's all you can do with it because there's nothing you can do with it, basically. So then they say, okay, now, what are we talking about? Our situation was, it was in Jerusalem, it became impure, right? It fell into this combo, it became impure, and it left Jerusalem. Now, when this source says, Rabbi Yehuda says yikaver, it doesn't even have to have left Jerusalem. In other words, any maaser sheni that was in Jerusalem that became impure has to be buried. That's what Rabbi Yehuda says. He doesn't say that also left Jerusalem. So if we're talking Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, that it has to be buried, and that's why it basically can't be fixed, which would mean is why it's batel barov, that's because even in Jerusalem, it wouldn't have to leave Jerusalem. So that can't be the case of the braita, that the braita matches Rabbi Yehuda, because then it makes no sense that the braita is giving this example where it left Jerusalem, because it didn't need to leave Jerusalem. Even in Jerusalem, if it became impure, it can't be fixed. So saying it was impure doesn't work, because either it can be redeemed, or if you're Rabbi Yehuda and it can't be redeemed, it has nothing to do with it leaving Jerusalem. So let's try option 3. We tried option 1, it was just impure. Then we tried option 2. It was produce bought in Jerusalem with your money that was maaser sheni, and that's why it can't be redeemed. We said, and because it was impure, that also can be redeemed. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, who thinks it can't, well, that's even if it didn't leave Jerusalem. So that didn't work. So third option, la'olam b'tahor. It really is pure. Now we're going to get very creative here. You ready? Uma yatsa. It doesn't mean it literally left Jerusalem. But we're talking about a case where it went into Jerusalem, the walls were up around Jerusalem, and then there was a battle and the walls of Jerusalem fell. Now, when the walls of Jerusalem fall, there's no more walls. This isn't Jerusalem anymore. Jerusalem means when there's walls around Jerusalem. So now you're stuck because now you can't eat it and you can't redeem it. Okay, we're going to see why. Now, you can't eat it because you have to eat in the walls of Jerusalem, and there are no walls. And you can't redeem it because the rabbi said that if you have, and this is what I mentioned before, if you have pure produce, not impure that leaves Jerusalem, we allow you to redeem, except Rabbi Yehuda who says no. Okay, or there, he actually impure produce in general, we don't. But the first thing we saw was if it was yatsa, right? Maaser sheni, shenitma, hodinoto afilu b'Yerushalayim, right? You can basically, if it went out, you can redeem it even if it's in. Now, the rabbi said that, okay, we're going to see this thing called liklot, okay? The rabbi said that once your produce is in Jerusalem, you bring it into Jerusalem, and then it leaves Jerusalem, you can no longer redeem it, okay? That's the rabbi's institute of this. So now we're going to say it's tahor, uma yatsa de nafel mechitzot, and then what happens? Well, now you have no way to redeem it because, number one, you can't eat it because there's no more Jerusalem. Number two, the rabbi said once it leaves Jerusalem, and this is basically technically leaving Jerusalem. Now, it didn't move outside the walls, but there are no walls. So it's basically not in Jerusalem anymore. So now that it's outside Jerusalem, you can't redeem it because of this rabbinic ordinance, okay? So now there's no way to fix it. Because there's no way to fix it, it's batel in this ta'arovet, right, this mixture. So now they say, wait a minute. But wait, and this is what I said a minute ago, which is the fact that you have to eat it in the walls of Jerusalem, that's a Torah law. It says, that's clear. But mechitzot liklot, the fact that you can't redeem it anymore, if it's not in the walls, is only rabbinic. Well, if it's only rabbinic, then maybe it will work in this case, because in other words, what did the rabbis say when it leaves the walls? It didn't actually leave the walls. Some crazy thing happened and the enemy came, knocked down the walls of Jerusalem. You could just say simply, the rabbis made their gzera in a case where there were walls in Jerusalem. When there were no walls, lo gazru rabbanan, in which case, maybe the rabbis would allow you to redeem it in this case. To which they answer, and this is the final answer, lo plug rabbanan ben ilu lemechitzot leben li. Just say the rabbi said, you can never, if it leaves the city of Jerusalem, which could mean literally outside the walls, or it could mean the walls fell down. Either which way, they made their gzera across the board. So basically, that's the case we're talking about. It was nichna, and as again, you're getting to a very, almost, I would say a little, rare case, you could call it. It went into Jerusalem. It got mixed, right? I guess it could have got mixed up in the Tarovet either inside or outside. That doesn't really matter. But while it was in Jerusalem, the walls fell. There's no way to resolve this. You can't eat it, and you now can't redeem it. Okay, and that's because when the rabbis instituted their gzera, you can't redeem it, they instituted it whether it actually physically left the walls or whether the walls came crashing down. And that would be the case we're talking about, where it would be batel berov because there's no way to fix it. So then what we did so far right now, basically in today's daf is a summary for now. We started with Chizkiya, who gave this resolution for how we could fix non-maaser sheni pruta. Then we said, well, if it can be fixed, then why isn't it batel berov? Why is it batel berov? It should be davar sheyesh matirin. We basically proved how we could get a case where it wasn't, and that's because you didn't have ma'od rishonot, and you can't fix it in any other way because all those ways might lead to people messing up halacha. Then, because we quoted this braita to make it very clear that if it wasn't clear from that Mishna, but the braita made it very clear that maaser sheni, that it doesn't have a pruta, is the case we're talking about. That's batel berov. And this other case of nichnas Yerushalayim v'yatsa. But now, after figuring out what this case of nichnas Yerushalayim v'yatsa is, we bring a totally different explanation. That there aren't two cases in that braita, but they're actually one case. Rav Huna bar Yehuda amar Rav Sheshet chad katane. It's all one case in that braita. Ma'asel sheni she'en bo shavet pruta shenichnas Yerushalayim v'yatsa. The case that's batel berov is a case of maaser sheni that was less than a pruta, that went into Jerusalem and then came out of Jerusalem, to which we're going to go through the same set of questions we just had on the case of Jerusalem. I live in Nichle. Why don't you just bring it back into Jerusalem and eat it? Well, it's because the walls fell and there's no more Jerusalem to eat it in. Why don't you redeem it? Right, so why don't you redeem it? And didn't Rava say mechitzot are the fact that you have to eat them in Jerusalem is Torah law, but the mechitza that once it leaves the city, you can't redeem it anymore is only rabbinic. And ki gazru rabbanan ki ilu lemechitzo ki leinu mechitzo lo gazru rabbanan. And maybe the rabbis only institute their gzera when there are mechitzo, but not when there aren't, and therefore you should be able to redeem it if you can't eat it. Well, lo plug rabbanan. No, the rabbis institute their gzera in every case. But now, if that's the case, the Gemara is going to ask, but then it doesn't make sense. The case given was a less than a shavat pruta. Because once you say it went into Jerusalem and left, and meaning it left, that the mechitzo fell, and there's no solution, this has nothing to do with a shavat pruta or not. If Rav Huna bar Yehuda thinks this whole case is one case, combine both those things. Doesn't make sense. It would have to be less than a shava pruta. Even a shava pruta can't be fixed in that case. And again, it can't be fixed at batel barav. To which they answer, according to, again, this is a second reading of that braita, it's not two separate cases. It's one case, lo mabaya kamar. It's a lo mabaya structure, which means it's both a shava pruta and not a shava pruta. But they had to tell you the not shava pruta case because you might have thought that maybe that could be fixed. Okay, let's see why. Lo mabaya yeshbo. That's if it has a shava pruta, then we say, once it went into the city, the rabbi said, now that the mechitzo fell, you can't redeem it because it already came into the city. And again, it means the city walls accepted it, which means it can no longer be redeemed. But about aimbo, amalo kaltule mechitzo. But in a case that's, now this is, we go back to classic Gzera de Rabbanit. The whole thing of klitat mechitzot, that once it goes in, you can no longer redeem it, is a rabbinic ordinance. When do rabbis make ordinances? In common occurrences. The fact that you would have less than the shava pruta enter the city of Jerusalem is an uncommon occurrence. So when the rabbis institute their gzera of klitat mechitzot, means you can no longer redeem it out, right, once it goes out of the city, maybe they only institute it in a common case where you have maaser sheni that's worth a pruta. Kamashmala, that's why it had to teach you the case of ambo shava pruta, that even in an ambo shava pruta, the rabbi's ordinance is relevant. And therefore, if it came into the city and the city walls fell, there's no way to solve this problem. It can't be eaten because there's no more Jerusalem. It can't be redeemed because it's no longer in the city of Jerusalem. It was in the city and it left the city. And the rabbi said, anytime that happens, again, even though it didn't physically leave the city, but there is no city of Jerusalem anymore, halachically with the walls, and therefore it can't be redeemed. And that's why if it falls into this combination of other stuff, it's batel b'rov, because it's not a davar sheyesh matirin. This was the very complicated part of today's stuff. The rest is fairly straightforward, but this is a lot of back and forth trying to figure out all sorts of possibilities about why these cases don't have any solution. Because if they had a solution, they would never be canceled. Okay, moving on. Now we go back to the background to Chizkiya. The background was that's what caused Chizkiya to say you could do it on Mal Rishonot is because you can't do it normally. Everyone agrees you can't do it normally. Just Chizkiya suggests you could do it on the remainder of this coin. Not everyone agrees with it. But this source explains to us why. Tanu Rabbanan, im ga'ol yigal ish mimaso, this pasuk in Vayikra, where it talks about redeeming the maaser, it says from his maaser. Whenever it says me, from, it always means some can be done, but not all of them. So that's what it's going to say now. Mima asro v'lo kol maaser. What is it coming to exclude? When can't you redeem it? Prat l'maaser sheni shein bo shava pruta. If it doesn't have a pruta, then it can't be redeemed on a coin. And then again, Chizkiya will come in and say, only if there's a coin you already redeemed on, then you can, but not otherwise. Itmar. Now we have a whole debate about this whole thing. Now we thought until now, when we said maaser sheni that doesn't have a pruta, shava pruta, it means you had wheat, let's say, and the wheat is not a pruta, the keren, the item itself. Now, if you remember, when you redeem maaser sheni, what do? You redeem it on a coin, but for its value plus another added fifth, which is really a quarter, which we're going to get to at the very end of today's stuff. Now, when we say it doesn't have a shava pruta, do we mean the wheat itself, or do we mean there's not a pruta in the fifth? Now, if there's not a pruta in the fifth, that means there's less than 4 pruta of the wheat itself. If the fifth isn't, because the fifth is really a quarter, so that would mean if it's less than 1, then it means the produce is less than 4 pruta over. So we're going to have a machloket between 2 amoraim here in Bavel and 2 amoraim in Eretz Yisrael. Rav Asi Itmar, Rav Ami Amar Ein Bo. Rav Asi Amar Ein Bechum Sho. Rav Asi says when we say Ein B'Shava Pruta can't be redeemed on a coin, we mean even if the chomesh isn't a pruta, which means less than 4 pruta can't be redeemed. It has to have minimum of 4 pruta to produce, which means 1 pruta of chomesh in order to redeem it on a coin. And same thing with Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish have the same argument. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Ein Bo, which is what we thought. The produce itself doesn't have a shava pruta. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish Amar Ein B'Chum Sho, not in the fifth. Today. Now we're going to bring a difficulty on the one that Ein Bo. It's a bit of a hard difficulty to get why it's a difficulty, but we'll just kind of go with what Rashi explains here. Maaser sheni she'ein bo shava pruta. This is going to sound very much like Chizkiya. If you have maaser sheni that doesn't have a shava pruta, dayo, this is going to be the key word. Dayo, it is enough, like from dayenu of Pesach, okay? It is enough. Dayo, it's sufficient. Now, they're going to assume the word it's sufficient means we're telling you something you really wouldn't have known otherwise, like a big chiddush, okay? Because otherwise it could have just said, do the following. It didn't need to add the word dayo, and that's where they're going to prove it must mean the chomesh has to have a pruta, because otherwise, what's the big chiddush? It's not such a chiddush. Okay, that's basically the proof here. So it's enough to say, it's sufficient to say, it and its fifth will be mechulal on ma'ot that you already, right, the extra that's left from something else. So if you say that the chomesh needs to have a shavar pruta, which means the produce itself needs to be 4 pruto, then we understand why you're saying this is a big deal. But even though the fruit itself, the produce has a pruta, because the chomesh doesn't have it, that's a big chiddush and therefore shapir. That will make sense. But dayo doesn't really need to be there. If you're just talking about a basic halacha, the produce doesn't have a pruta, this is how you do it, you wouldn't really need the word dayo. Kasha. So in fact, this is difficult to the opinion that we thought all along, which is the produce needs to be a pruta. Now we're learning that it seems better opinion that the chomesh needs to be a pruta, which means the produce needs to be 4 pruto. Anything less than that, you can't redeem it onto a coin, unless you have left over from a different time. Last thing, we'll end with this question, and this is the big question that we've been talking about. I always tell you this, but now we're going to see it inside and prove it. Chumsha milagav or chumsha milavav? Do we calculate the fifth from the inside, meaning we take the principal's 100, we do a fifth of that, which would be adding 20, or milavar from the outside, which means we basically say, oh, you have 100, that has 4 parts, we're going to add a 5th part. So when you look at the whole, the 5th is going to be a whole 5th of the entire thing from the outside once you add the 5th, which means if it's 100, we're going to have to add 1 part of 4, right? We're going to add an additional quarter, which is 25. And we're going to say, oh, now you have 125, and a 5th is a 5th of that outside amount. And we know that that's already the answer, but we're going to see it tomorrow where they learn it from. So something we've been talking about all along, now we finally get to there. So again, what we did today, we tried to bring this question on Chizkiya, how could it be batal barov? It should be davar sheyesh matirin, because he had the solution. And then we had to explain that it's a case where his solution wouldn't work. And then we had the other, since we brought this braita to prove that it was batal barov, we then had to explain this other case in the Chnas Yerushalayim. We had 2 options: either it was its own case, or it was combined together with the shavar pruta, with the Ein Bo shavar pruta as one case. And then we saw how we know you can't redeem a pachot shavar pruta. And then we saw this machloket, when we say it doesn't have a shavar pruta, do we mean it, or do we mean the chomesh doesn't have? Okay, the produce itself or the chomesh. We brought a difficulty on the one saying it was the produce needs to be a shavar pruta. It sounds like really it's the chomesh, although they didn't resolve it definitively. And then we asked this question, which we'll answer tomorrow: is a fifth or a quarter really? And with that, we'll finish for the way we would call it, a quarter. And that's it for today. Wishing everyone a good day, and we will meet tomorrow, Erev Pesach. And as I said in the beginning of class, all the details of what to do during Pesach and how the pin will be posted. Okay, wishing everyone a great day.